Well, I hope you had a great weekend. Happy Monday. Welcome to Red Sox Now. As we inch closer to Thanksgiving, we start getting through the holidays. As you know, I mean, we're breezing by. We're halfway past November, so we're inching closer to that. A lot of things are going to happen. We had one big signing that we'll talk about in just a few minutes here, and then we will get closer to the winter meetings. That will be a lot of fun. Maybe I should go to the winter meetings. That'd be fun. Do the show from the hotel lobby. And just have people randomly pop in. Maybe we can get that done. But then we'll have the Rule 5. We'll have a lot of things happening. And then, like I've said on the last few shows, we are really not that far away from things. I know that pitchers and catchers report in mid-February, but a lot of players live in those spring training homes. And they'll be working out. I mean, you guys are on social media, so you see that Brian Bayo was throwing the other day. So it's already beginning. Social media handles at the Radio Mike is easy. Ideas for you, guys and gals. You've brought up Discord. I have a Discord. I've tried putting the links in here. I think they get removed automatically because it's protected. If you have Discord, I believe I can invite you or send me a message. You can email me, antonellis.michael@gmail.com, but you guys know how to find me. And I would love to have you on. I have a Red Sox MLB chat. I have about, 6 Discord. That way we can talk throughout, 24/7. It's hanging with Mike. If you'd like to pop over in the Discord. I'm a big Discord guy. And would love to have you. I have to, of course, big sports weekend. There were some great college football games. My alma mater, by the way, Framingham State, Division III, was they were down 21-7. They rallied back in the final minute. They got really lucky on some deep throws, and they clinched their conference, so they're in the Division III playoffs. Do you have a school? Doesn't matter what division it is. Bruins game on Saturday was unbelievable against the Canadians. Now, I know I have people from all over the place, so I do want to talk about the NFL quickly on Sunday. Like for those doing fantasy football and betting, that was a out of sorts. A lot of weird things happened with the Bengals-Pittsburgh game, but there was a lot of crazy things in that. I don't think people had the Sean Tucker 3-touchdown game. All right. We got to get to baseball. Josh Naylor signed with Seattle. That was somebody that we all talked about that made sense for the Mariners. But I do kind of think, and I do a lot of prep for this show when I put in baseball news, Red Sox news. November is the month where really nobody knows. Now, we provide scenarios, but one thing that I don't love about some of the reports that are out there is the headlines are predictions. Like yesterday, I saw the Bregman is signing. Or, that's kind of how it comes up. Now, we all have headlines. We get it. But a lot of people are predicting things with years and money attached to it. Now, I understand. I get, that's part of their business. But I would rather see, scenarios, why it made sense. It's just this reporter is predicting he'd be a great match. 5 years, 160 with the Mets. Now, I think a lot of this stuff comes from, and I know, agents talk to reporters. Like Boris and John Heyman are tight. I know Nick Cafardo, the late Nick Cafardo, dear friend of mine. He had a real good relationship with Boris. And I remember him reaching out to me before they traded for Adrian Gonzalez and was asking me about something to do with Adrian's minor league. And this was when the Red Sox hadn't even traded yet. And I'm like, oh, something's going on here. So a lot of the guys and gals that are reporters, the agents tell them things. The agents want stuff out there. Boris is leaking a lot of things out there. I've been told from people, from people that work for major league teams. They want this stuff out there. It creates a buzz. There could be no market for a lot of these guys. And realistically, for some of these guys, like last year with Juan Soto, how big of a market did he have? I love when we see like a free agent like Schwarber or Alonso and they go, the teams that likely are in the mix are the Mets, Yankees, Phillies, Cubs, Giants. Really? You mean the teams with money? Do we see reports that the Pirates and Marlins are in on Bregman or Alonso? No. So I don't love predictions like that. I saw them all weekend because they don't know. I like scenarios. Well, what's the difference? Well, scenarios break down, and maybe they're out there, but give me a Bregman piece that has layers of why it makes sense. Right? I mean, and of course he has a market. I mean, to think that he wouldn't have a market is crazy. Plays third base. Position of high importance. I mean, I'm not surprised. Of course the Mets would be interested. I still think the Yankees would be interested. If you think about it. Oh, they're good. You know, I had a couple of Yankee fans. Well, we got Ryan McMahon and Ahmad Rosario. Okay, yeah. Is Alex Bregman better than them? Yes. Maybe defensively? Probably not. McMahon is top 3-4 defensive third baseman. He's really, really good. But it's the Yankees. By the way, watch the A-Rod. If you have HBO, the A-Rod documentary is really good. Really, really good. It's they're releasing it every Thursday. So I noticed some of these streaming services are kind of pulling back, releasing a whole series, which makes sense. It's not good business. I love to divert. Somebody must have said with the streaming services, why are we releasing a whole series and then someone binges it in a day and then they cancel? Really? What took you so long to figure that out? So now I know that they're pulling back. I notice Hulu's doing that. HBO's, yeah. You want long term, but that's good. But again, I told you this at the beginning. This is going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly with Bregman. You're going to read that the Sox don't have a chance. They're going to be all in. You're already hearing people saying that, you know, they're unwilling to go 6. I don't know that. They're not going to tell you. Okay, so this is what I wanted to have for Jarren. I almost call it, what did I call him? Duran? That'd be a good nickname, Duran. So I don't love this kind of reporting either, but it is what these guys have to do. Bob Nightingale, and I found this piece, it was over the weekend, reported that the Red Sox believe they need an upgrade over Duran and that he needs a fresh start. This is interesting. Now, I wonder where he got that from. Did he get this from? And we know there's leaks. They're everywhere. And sometimes it's strategic. Teams want things out there. But I was surprised at this report. Quote, believe they need an upgrade over Duran and that he needs a fresh start. He took it even further by stating it would be a massive surprise if he's in Fort Myers come spring training. Wow. How in the world did he get that? Bob Nightingale of the USA Today is fantastic. I mean, he is. He's a good writer. But that is a strong quote. So what's interesting in all of this, and I'm going to be hypothetical. That's what we do on the podcast. Maybe part of what Jarren wants is a fresh start. Did we ever think of that? And I don't necessarily meaning it's bad. He loves Boston. He's not from here. Maybe he, things that he's gone through, maybe it's harder in a place that's smaller. We've never really thought about that. Like maybe, when I read that fresh start, is that more on what he wants? California guy. He's young. He's got a family. Maybe he wants to be, if you're a California guy, could be a dream. When you get drafted, you're hoping. I talk to players all the time in my 29 years. When we would have a New England kid that I remember, one of my fondest memories in baseball, if I had like a top 5 moment, I have weird moments. If I don't want to number them, but if I put moments that really stand out to me, it's when Rich Hill rehabbed in Portland, and I got to spend. I interviewed him outside our clubhouse, and we spoke for about a half hour. And he was like, "Oh wow, he's from Mass. I'm from Mass," and we just talked about that. How cool is it that we're part of the Red Sox? Because it's completely different when you're a New England person and you meet another New England person in what I do. Like Rich Gedman and I have a bond because we're from here. Being from Mass is different. Like there's, the grouchy old Irish guy. Like we get that, where other players or coaches, like they don't understand sometimes how the East Coast can be rough if you're from out West. But there is a kinship about being from New England when you work in the Red Sox system. Same, and players have told me, like, we had a player once who was from Arizona. He got drafted by the Diamondbacks, got traded to us, and he's like, I just bought a house in Arizona. I was living near home, and then all of business happened. But I just thought it was interesting, the fresh start. That could be something that he's talked to. These are things that we don't. I do more critical thinking, and I bring these scenarios up because I've been there, and I know players sometimes need fresh starts, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing at all. Just things can get overwhelming, and I'm not saying, again, I'm being hypothetical, but I just thought that was interesting with the fresh start. That might be more on what Jarren wants. And I would get that if I was a player and I was from a certain place and I had a chance and I saw maybe an opportunity to go play somewhere, San Diego or, the Giants, somewhere closer to home. But I thought that was interesting that he had that in there. And again, my stance on this. I do really like Duran. I'd be fine with them keeping him. And I'd be fine if they did something with any of the guys, like I've said, if it made the team better. It has to have that intentions. So I'm more of a let's wait and see what happens. And you can make the case for all of those guys. I don't believe Abreu has the upside. My stance on those two is they've only had 2 years, but listen, to have doubts is absolutely fine and a good point. My point with that is that those guys have improved. They do bring other elements to the game, and they all do. They all have something that the other doesn't, if you think about it. Anthony's probably never going to be the runner, the type of base runner, dynamic in that regards as Duran. Probably will never be as good as an outfielder as Abreu and Rafaela, right? I mean, you could say he could, but maybe in right, but not going to be what Rafaela is. It's interesting that there's all, like think about if Anthony had Rafaela's defensive ability, he'd be a top 5 player in the history of the game, right? If he was a Gold Glove outfielder with speed, that's a 5-tool player. That's what A-Rod was. A-Rod was, in his prime. He hit for average. He hit for power. He was really good defensively. He could run. He had all 5 tools. They're rare. Those guys are rare. Minor league, like Baseball America, they're obsessed with like 5-tool players, and there's like a handful, right? I mean, finding a guy that hits for average, for power, elite arm, elite defensively, elite speed, like, and you know who was pretty damn close to that? Was Duran a couple of years ago in 24. He hit for average. He hit for power. He was pretty good in the bases. He was better defensively in center. His arm is not what Abreu is, but that he had pretty close to that. So we'll see. I was a little turned off by that article because I don't know. But he has to do that. He's getting that from someone. But someone to say that it would be a massive surprise. We'll hold him to that. Right? So I thought that was an interesting little nugget there. Boy, that's the talk of the offseason will be what are the outfielders going to do. And now there's no more stuff coming up with Abreu. That Abreu is another guy that teams like. And I would be okay with that too. I have more questions about him offensively than Rafaela, because Rafaela, to me, I always looked at him as someone hitting 7 through 9 because it's center field. That expectations just I've never really thought of him hitting higher. So that's the expectations. Abreu, I kind of felt like, middle of the order guy, right? I didn't think of Abreu as kind of a 7 through 9 or even 6 is still, but 4, 5, 6, that's kind of how I felt to him. And those are the things that they're thinking about. Do we think he has a chance to be that? If not, make your team better, right? Brandon Clark's a name that we should keep our eye on. I think a lot of you have brought that up anyways. Another elite pitching prospect who's had some control issues, but he's only thrown 38 innings of pro ball. A lefty with massive upside. He's, hitting 97, 98. He's had Tommy John surgery, which he had as a high school junior. But this is another leverage type of arm. They forecast a lot of developing. Like he's probably going to be in high A, probably get to double A. But so you're going to have, some of those A-ball teams that the Red Sox are going to have in the next couple of years are going to be unbelievable. They're going to be the most sought-out teams we're talking about with all those draft picks. Pitchers are going to be there. Now with no short season, you're going to have, Greenville's going to be loaded. Salem is low A. They switched, so it's Salem then Greenville. But you're going to have those two levels. So when you're forecasting, that's what they do. And they don't just do things on a whim. They were pretty defiant on Connolly early. This is a guy that we think's a big league starter. Before a lot of people didn't. This wasn't just, they do want to see how he performs at certain levels. But the plan was not, let's just put him in AAA and see how he does. No, the plan was, we like what we see. We think he can pitch in the big leagues. Let's see how the next level looks. That's why you get sent up. When you get sent to AAA, they feel like you're going to pitch in the big leagues. So if Clark is a guy, and they forecasted early, Tolia, of course, they just drafted, but if they were to trade one of those recent guys, there's a reason. And it's I think, unbelievably weird and ironic that the Red Sox are now in a position where they can trade pitching. And if you don't think that that is a huge, huge strength of Craig Breslow and the guy before him, And Dombrowski did some of that too. But the emphasis from an ex-pitcher working with an ex-player who like I will bring this up probably once or twice a week, the glow of Cora talking on the postseason press conference about the arms that they have. Just the emotion and an aura and a look without saying a word. Oh, I knew from being watching the Woo Sox and knowing the guys we have and talking to our coaches, and a lot of people come in telling me about other guys. You see the big league manager light up like a Christmas tree. And I'm sure as an ex-GM, he was right in there with Breslow when he was hired about where the organization needs to go. And I think we all knew that. We all knew that. Always felt short with that. That, to me, still should be put more in importance, too, than position players. Obviously, you need to, But if at the end of the day, they just, and I know this will make people mad, if they did not bring in Alonso or Schwarber and say they went with Romy Gonzalez at first base, which I know is going to upset a lot of you, and they kept Bregman but went out and got more pitching, I know a lot of you will be mad at that, which is confusing to me. It's confusing. People would be mad if they traded for Ryan and signed like Framber Valdez and put Romy at first and signed Bregman. 90% of the fan base will be upset, which makes no sense. 0 sense to me. Well, you need that power. No, I guess, right? Like Anthony's going to be a power hitter. You need pitching. Like if you had, like say they went a step further and they got Ryan and they signed Michael King and they signed Devin Williams and they did, or Helsley, and they did that super bullpen idea. And Bregman and small other position player free agents is what they brought in. People will still be upset. I would rather that route, to be honest. I would love to do all of it, but I wouldn't obsess over. Let me put it this way. I would be disappointed if it was Bregman, Alonso, and then no starting pitching. But I think people would be happy. They would be all right if they didn't trade for number 2, if they brought in bats, which, yes, I'm not naive to know that you need a little more thump. We know that. But I'll still take the arms. I know they have a lot, but you can always add and you can always move guys to the bullpen. And we're talking about a team that is close to getting in the World Series, right? You playoff team last year. You could have won 90-plus games without all those injuries. I think we saw down the stretch, certainly deficiencies hitting came with a massive injury, but you didn't have a lot, starting. So that dynamic's going to be fun to play out. And I think they will do that. But in a perfect world, or being realistic, I don't know if they're going to be able to do Alonso, Bregman, Ryan, all 4 of those. And I know they have money. I just don't know if that's going to happen. Because you do have to think about some of your guys internally and the way that they want to build. You can't just massively try to build like the Mets are doing, just spend, even if it doesn't make sense. So all of that will be interesting. But if they had a Narvaez, Alonso, Meyer, Story, Bregman, Anthony, Rafaela, Duran / Abreu / Yoshida, that's pretty good with arms on top of that. So I'm more intrigued of what's going to happen with the pitching, to be honest. And let's get your comments before we head out. At Sox Attic PA, I'm assuming Pennsylvania. Garrett was the reason the Sox made it to the wild card. He statistically had a much better season than Skubal. I wouldn't say he had a much better, other than ERA, which was close. Yes and no. 2.21, 2.59 is not close. I know I'm splitting hairs a little bit. 2.21 is good. It should not have happened. Well, I mean, I would have been okay with Crochet winning to Sox Addict, but I could say the same argument for Skubal. The Tigers don't sniff. The Tigers had way less talent than you. Way less talent. Wasn't a great lineup. They had no bullpen. I mean, you had Crochet with Chapman. I mean, the Tiger fan could argue that right back, but I don't. I could see if they wouldn't give it to both, but I don't think that. I don't think it was not close. Peter Garcia, I'm not surprised Skubal won, but Crochet was worthy. Yeah, definitely worthy. I'm guessing the number 2 starter will be attained via trade, but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to King being brought in, even though I don't think it's going to happen. We'll see as always. Yeah, we'll see. I know. It's a lot of, fits. I mean, every free agent pitcher fits the Red Sox, right? I mean, like, that's not hard to write that. Give me scenarios, why it makes sense. Someone made this thing that the Astros are really in need of an outfielder. And that they could go hard after Duran or Abreu. How weird would it be if Abreu went back to Houston? But somebody wrote that they'd be willing to give up 4 top prospects for an outfielder. I just don't see that making any sense. Because how good are those prospects? But it could be for Duran. Yeah, would you do that? Would you do that for Abreu? Probably. But one writer had Houston giving up like a top draft pick from a couple years ago for an outfielder. We'll see. They have, I guess, more pitching in their system, and they've been prospect loaded with position players. But wouldn't you think that? And I think 2 of those were outfielders. I guess. Wouldn't you think that maybe one of them could play in the big leagues? But they're looking now. So I would have never have guessed Houston. I got a message on X before we leave, and I'll do that as a comment. And it was, and I think that this was John. I feel bad for John. Might have taken my point the wrong way. He said, "Why don't you like Tarek Skubal and think he's a bad fit for the Red Sox?" It's a complete opposite. I love him. I actually think they have the capital to make a deal. My point was, Johnny, diehard Tiger fan. I put myself as a 14, 15-year-old in that diehard fan base. I know the Tigers have a great fan base. They hate the Red Sox. They hate the Yankees. And I know people have brought up, but if they do make a deal that makes sense for them, I understand all of that. And I'm not saying that it's not a bad baseball move. To me, it's a bad business decision. And it's amazing how much brushback I got from this when I said this, because a lot of you kill John Henry. The Ilitch family owns Little Caesars. All right? I would assume that makes pretty good money. They own casinos in Michigan. They own the Red Wings. They own the building the Red Wings play in. My best friend works for them. He does accounting for them. The Ilitch family has a ton of money, and they don't want to pay Skubal. They're not a small market team. I think for business, it is a horrific move to trade Tarek Skubal to a hated rivalry. I don't care what you get. Johnny Diehard does not care about Brandon Clark or Peyton Tolley or Connolly. He doesn't. Just reverse it. If we had Crochet and we traded him after all these great years, that's my point. I'm not saying it's not a great baseball move. It's a horrible business decision. And if the Tigers do something like that, shame on them. Shame on them. They should pay the guy. I don't care how old he is. He's worth it. He's the reason you've been in the playoffs the last 2 years. That's a very flawed roster, which makes the argument why they should trade him. I guess you want to that's the White Sox route. They've done that twice. And everybody argue with me, well, they had a trade sale because they're not going anywhere. How's that working? No, you trade and then you replenish. Okay. That's fine. How did that work out? They got 4 players. I was told at the time, oh my God, this is going to be such a win for the White Sox, just like I was told the same thing with the Crochet deal. Okay. Well, it's going to take time. How much time are we looking at? Would you want that? Chicago, small market, biggest airport right? Them in Atlanta, two of the biggest airports in the world. Top 6, top 5 media market, right? New York, LA, Boston, Chicago, and they got to replenish. I mean, that's BS. That's what crappy organizations that don't want to spend, and that's why sometimes I have brushback on the way people talk about the ownership here. Sure, there have been times where they've taken a stance spending, but they wouldn't do something like that. You can say, well, they did it with Devers. That's completely different scenario. This is an unwilling to keep good players. The White Sox read on Crochet was as dumb as a front office move, one of the worst front office moves in the last 5 or 6 years. They didn't even think he was a starter. Nobody in the industry agreed with that. There were, what I've been told, 12 to 13 teams were in on that trade. At least. And you saw what the Red Sox did as soon as they did that deal. And you could sit here and tell me, well, it's, hindsight. No, it's not. That was strategic. They knew exactly what, and we saw it from Crochet that last year. But I just think those kind of moves for business. Do you think Chicago fans were doing jumping jacks last year because they got Kyle Teal? Maybe. But what you just told me, Skubal was the lone reason Detroit got there. Garrett Crochet, I told you, he was my MVP. He was probably a huge, if not 60% of the reason. He changed your whole team. You need those guys. You don't get rid of those guys. And, but now, this could be another show, but there's the argument where if some teams do have financial restrictions and Crochet, Skubal knows he can get $400 million somewhere. Yeah, that's going to be the challenge. That's the challenge. That's the other side of the coin. Why owners are probably going to lock out everyone. But John, no, I will happily welcome him. I think the Red Sox do have really good pieces, and I would give up major league talent for him because they'll sign him. If they trade for him, they'll sign for him. But it will be a move that you'll lose. Detroit will lose season ticket holders. Their business. And you could say I'm overreacting. Maybe I am. Maybe it will work out. I just know that I'm glad that my team doesn't constantly get rid of players like that. Like the Red Sox would have, they would have given an arm like they just did. Skubal should have gotten a huge deal a couple of years ago, and he didn't. So, I 3 Skubal questions. Great Monday. This was good, therapeutic, right? Love talking sports with all of you. Leave your comments, drop them. We'll read them Tuesday. 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, who knows? And I'll respond to you throughout the day. I know Mondays stink, but enjoy it, right? Hope you enjoyed the podcasts. Discord, message me for the link on social @the Radio Mike. We'll talk to you Tuesday, and as always, go Sox.